what's up everyone? Welcome to Effects Maniac. This is Sayed Mahmoud Amiri again. Welcome to the part 2 of the Maya Mesh Basics. So we did the part 1. I hope you enjoyed it. And we're going to do the part 2. So we're going to be creating something a little like this in the end of this tutorial. So you can go ahead and stay tuned and watch the tutorial till the end and make sure to enjoy. And we'll be creating this result. So let's get started. Here I am in a fresh scene in Maya, and just like the part 1, we need an object to be able to create the mesh network. So I'm just gonna shift right click and create a cube. Today we're going to be taking a look at some more nodes, and a very important node. So first off, I'm just going to select this and go into the effects menu if it is not already here. Even if you don't go there, you can just go into the mesh and click on this mesh waiter or the mesh network, and we'll just create a mesh network for you. So you can hit Control A for the attribute editor and it'll come up. So everything is just mentioned in the first part. So if you're new to this, make sure to watch the first tutorial. I'll put the card somewhere here on the top and link in the description. Alright, so we've created this object, we've taken a look at some of the operators, but now I want to show you guys a very cool node, which is the dynamics node. And as the name says, it will turn your mesh objects into dynamics and use the bullet solver to solve the simulation. Alright, so a very simple example would be to, if I go into the distribute node and I set it to probably like a grid, and I just increase the number of grids on the Y, maybe like set it to 4 by 4 by 4, and I need to move this up, right? So what we need to do is we need to add a transform node and just move it up like 20 is a little too much, I think, maybe 10 on the Y axis. Alright, so now I want to turn them into dynamic objects. So you're going to select your mesh, go into the nodes and select the dynamic node and click add. And what it will do is it will basically create a floor, which is going to be this one. So if I play this right now, they'll just fall down and just, you know, interact with each other and with the ground, which is really cool. And yeah, so there are some things we can do. So first off, it has a bullet solver. So we have the collision iterations, which is basically the quality of your simulation, you know, colliding objects. So I'm going to set it to 12. And you have the ground and you have the position, which is a little bit below the original grid. So I'm just going to set this to 0 so that it is on the 0 point. And now if I play this back, make sure every time you update it, you go to the first frame and then play it. So now you have it, and it just falls down. Alright, so if you want to tweak the if you want them to collide with another object, here's a cool trick. So you can go ahead and move them up a little bit more. Probably if I go into the transform node, 20 would be fine. And I'm going to add another object, so probably like a person. So I'm going to go into modify, Windows, general editor, content browser. I'm just going to add a head, and this head is going to be huge, so I'm going to scale it down and put it here. So I want all these boxes to fall on his head. Alright, you don't want to do that in real life because it really is going to hurt you, but right now we can do it. So I'm going to select the bullet solver in the outliner, and if the outliner is not there, you can go into window, outliner, and here is a rollout called the collider objects. So you can go ahead, you want to take your object that you want to collide with your mesh objects. You don't want to click on it, but you want to middle click and drag it to the collider object. So now if I play this back, it is going to collide with that object and with his head basically. And you know, it doesn't matter how many objects you have or anything, it's just going to collide very naturally. So if I set this to spherical and I have like 100 objects, or maybe I can scale this down to like turn down the radius, probably like, you don't want to keep them too close because they're gonna start colliding with each other because, you know, because of the bullet solver. So you don't want to keep them too close to each other. Make sure they're not like touching. And you can definitely increase the number of objects to like 200. And I can move it up because it is already touching his head. So go to transform node and make it like 30. So that's better. So now if I play this, yeah, so you can see all of them are kind of, you know, falling on his head, which is really nice. So if I play this, you know, previously you couldn't, I mean not previously, but if you're using Maya NParticles, which I've done a really detailed tutorial on, so if you want to, you can go ahead and check out the Maya NParticles basics. I've done that. You can't really get inner particle collisions, you know, with the particles other than spheres, because they have a shape for a sphere, but they don't have shape for a specific object. But in here we can add any object that you want. So you can add like a platonic solid and just like have it there. And remember how we used like multiple objects? First you would go into the Mash Repro node and middle click and drag the platonic solid, and it will not be there because we need to add, if I select this, we need to add an ID node. So now you'll be having it, and I can just like scale this down a little bit. So now this object as well will collide with each other and with that colliding object. So because it is using the bullet solver, the inner object collisions won't be a problem. Okay. Alright, so that is that. Definitely a very cool feature to have inside of Mash, so you can do some amazing things with it. You can go increase the friction so that they don't slide so much, so now they're just going to be there. If you increase it to 1, they won't slide as much, just like that. You can increase the bounciness, so they'll bounce like so much. Alright, and some other stuff, so like the velocity, the main velocity that they're falling down and stuff like that. So there's a very cool option here called initially sleeping. So if I turn this on, they won't fall down until unless they get hit by an object, by a colliding object. So we have this colliding object. Maybe I want his head to go into those particles or those objects. So you can go ahead and hit, go into the position or the translate, set key, move to like 70 frames and just move it up. Alright, and just right click and set key again. So now what they'll do is, until unless an object is colliding with it, they won't just move. So if I play this now, so now they'll be active, because they're going to get hit by an object, and now they are going to move. Alright, so this is the option called you know, initially sleeping. So yeah, let's go ahead and you can also like set constraints, so you can click on it and create. So now they'll have these connections, so they're just gonna stick together like an object. But you're gonna have some options here, so you can go ahead and select the go here, and you can go into the constraint and select it and double click on it, and now there are different types, so you can set it to like spring. Let's see what happens with this. So they are gonna just be like, you know, moving around with this springy constraint. And you know, you can set the different modes of, you know, them sort of constraining with each other, closest connect to point. So it's gonna be like that, to a single point. Or you can go into like connect touching. So yeah, whenever they touch each other, they will just connect. This is gonna be an interesting effect. So you can create like clusters of things, I would say. Yeah, like whenever two objects collide with each other, it will just create a constraint, and you can increase the maximum number of constraints to like 10. So the more constraints you have, the more connections you're gonna have. Alright, stronger the connections. So you have different types of constraints, and you have different types of connections which you can check. So close nearest is probably the most common option. Yeah. So these are you can also turn on like breakable. So if you turn this on, the constraints and the connections will break based on an external force. So yeah, this is actually looking really cool. Alright, yeah, so they have constraints initially, but an extra force will just force them to break. Alright, so you can select the object and it's looking pretty nice, you know. So you can use these constraints on, you know, some different things and create like a plexus looking effect. But yeah, these are the options on the constraints of this. So let's go ahead and take a look at some other I think we've taken a look, we've talked enough about the dynamics and the bullet solver node. Alright, so let's take a look at some other nodes. So I can add a color, which we've taken a look at. So you can go ahead and add a color and probably change it to like what, blue or something, and you can add some randomness to it. And the utility that I'm going to talk about is trail. So if you click on it, it'll simply add a trail whenever there's movement across the objects. So I'm just going to reset it, and if I play this back, so now you can see that we have all these trails. So you can take the trails and you can go into the trails and you can set them to joining dots and stuff. So if you want to visualize that thing, you can do that. So yeah, and again you can select that trail mesh, select it, go there. You can increase the thickness or the scale, you can increase the count and the different types. So connect to point, the same things that we had on the constraints, but this one is actually interesting. So you can go ahead and do that. So, and it is dynamic, so it is just basically it depends on the objects and the number of connections that you have. So the number of objects and the number of connections and everything that you have, it is going to create like connections between the objects. And what's interesting, it will just move in a very dynamic way, right? So it's just really nice. Alright, and yeah, so that is the trails. But there's a very cool node that will sort of allow you to even replicate this whole mesh system. So it's called the Replicator. So if you add it and you change the number of replications, you can go ahead and basically replicate the whole system, and you can just go ahead and increase the position and everything. So you can go back here and you know, you'll have like 9 of these mesh simulations, which is going to be huge and it is going to take some time to calculate. But the thing is, if you want to like basically replicate the whole system, you can use this replicator, and like there are some different patterns which you can do. So pattern 3, and you know, the number of particles, the number of replications you can go ahead and increase, right? So it is going to give you, I mean, if you want to multiply your mesh network, basically like as many times as you want, you can use this replicator node. And let's see here what else we have. So you have the random node, replicator node, the signal node, dynamics, color, curve is actually a very interesting one. So if I go ahead and save this, and I'm gonna get a new scene. So I go there and I'll add just another object like a sphere, and go into mesh, create mesh network, and I'll just create a curve. So first off, I need to create a curve, just like a pencil curve. So I'll take it just like that. Alright, so I want to go into mesh and add like a curve node and just drop the curve here. So just middle click and drag. So now this object is moving onto that curve, but the problem is why it is offsetted is because if you're going to distribute node, we have this distance. So if I set this to 0, now it is moving across that path. So you can go into the curve and increase the steps, so it'll just move like that. And you can go ahead, the animation step, like how slow and how fast the animation will be, you can increase it from here or decrease it. And then you can add the velocity noise and velocity random. Some of them will go fast, some of them will go slow, just like that. And yeah, you know, and you can keep on stacking these nodes on top of each other. Like if I add a random, like not the random node, but the, maybe you can add the random node. Probably like turn on the uniform scale and just the scale a little bit, and into the distribute node increase the count, just like that. And we can go into the main mesh waiter, and I'll just add a signal, so it'll be like that. And let's increase the positions, so they'll just go like dancing onto the curve, and decrease the time scale so that it just slows it down a little bit. And you can create some beautiful animations with it. So yeah, and it can be any curve. You can delete this curve and you can add a circle and just rotate it just like that. And going to the mesh, go to the curve and just middle click and drag that one. So now you'll have this curve. So the particles are actually going there. So you can decrease the speed so they're going very slow. Yeah. So you can do some fun things with this, like moving the objects across a curve. And you can even add the dynamics node here. So if I add the dynamics node here right now, you see they'll fall down and they'll not really sort of follow the thing. But then you have this option called the position strength. So you can just go ahead and increase that. So it will basically maintain the inner particle collision, the collider and the bullet solver and everything, but it will still sort of ignore the gravity. So that is very interesting, because you don't always want the particles to be colliding with each other, but you don't want them to fall down, right? So yeah, that is a very cool feature. So you can definitely mesh bias the position strength. So yeah, you can go into the random node, definitely decrease that, so now they will sort of collide with each other, which is really nice. And you can add a trail, so just trail. Yeah, and set it to like joint dots. So maybe we can go into the random node and just increase the position to be like 5, 5, and 5. And the signal node as well, sorry. So 15, 15, and 15. Go back here. So now they are sort of still maintaining that movement, but still colliding with each other in a very cool way, and sort of mixing the different nodes. So I hope you are getting the idea, and the number of things that you can do is just unlimited. And you can go back here into the you can select the trails mesh, go into there and increase the trail size. So yeah, basically like that. That is pretty nice, I would say. And again, you can have multiple objects, so you can go into the repro node. I don't know, I like the platonic thing, and I do want to add a cube as well. So just like that. And I'm gonna go into the repro mesh, and I'll add these. So I'll add the middle click and drag the platonic solid and the cube, and I'm gonna go into the mesh main waiter, and I'm gonna add an ID node, and make sure to set it to 3, because we have 3 different objects. And you can go into the main distribute node. So we're going back and forth a lot, and I'm hoping that you're getting the ideas, because we've already covered it, but it is looking pretty nice, very good. It's beautiful. And just basically add a color node while we're there as well. So let's go there, color, pick like an orangish sort of a color, just random, just like that. Probably like a bit darker, yeah, so not that intense of a color. But then you can go into the strength and turn down the strength, so it'll look pretty nice. So yeah, So then you can go ahead and add some lights and render this thing out, and it is looking pretty nice. Okay, so this is basically it for this effect for mesh, and I hope you learned something from it. And if you've missed anything, make sure to tell me in the comment section for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something from it. And if you're new to my channel, I'm getting close to like 5,000 subscribers, which is really cool, and I can't thank you enough for the support and everything. So keep supporting me by subscribing to my channel and you know, liking the videos, and you can follow me on my Instagram. And if you need some really cool high-end royalty-free no copyright music, make sure to check us out on our YouTube channel called Audio Aura. So you can go ahead and download these music, use them wherever you want. They're completely free, and there's some really good music. Alright, so make sure to enjoy. And this was today's tutorial. Till the next one, enjoy working.